Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and today I want to talk about the best games to play right now on the PS5, which were all released in 2023. It's definitely been some of the busiest few months that we've had towards the end of the year, but we also had some great releases in the first half of 2023 that we've probably forgotten about by now. So these are my top 12 games to play from the last 12 months, all of which can be played on the PlayStation 5. And before we jump in, let me know what your favourite game is or one that you would recommend everybody picking up. Right, so there's probably no surprise here, but Spider-Man 2 did make it onto the list. This was one of the most highly anticipated games of 2023 and it did not disappoint. Essentially, you get to play as both Peter Parker and Miles Morales as you explore and swing around New York City, fighting enemies and taking out the various bosses, most notably Venom. It kind of took everything that we liked from the previous games, but improved the visuals, combat elements, and added a few new features that made it feel fresh. Now, as you play as both characters, you can swap between Peter Parker and Miles Morales within seconds. You can also change your suits and fast travel, all of which are a massive improvement over the previous games. And also, you not only have the option to run and swing around, but they've introduced the ability of flying using the new wingsuits. Now, if you've played either of the prequels to this one, which was Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales, you should really enjoy this one as well. Now, although you don't need to have played them first, I would definitely recommend it, plus they are awesome games. In fact, Miles Morales is currently included in PlayStation Plus if you're on the extra tier, so it might be worth giving this one a go too. This next one was set 13 years after the first game, and that is Alan Wake 2. This is one of the darkest and most unsettling thriller games you'll ever play, and it looks incredible on the PS5. So the story once again follows the best-selling novelist Alan Wake, who has been trapped in an alternate dimension, which he kind of created himself. It's dark, it's slow, it's jumpy, and it is perfect for playing at night with the lights off. The entire gameplay, story, and atmosphere makes this feel like a real masterpiece. And to be honest, anybody who enjoys horror-like games has got to give this one a go. Not only does it visually look incredible, but the sound design just sucks you into the story. Now, although this is a sequel and it does follow on from the first game, they have changed the genre from an action game to a survival horror game. So if you have played the first one, this will feel a lot more jumpy and scarier by comparison. But it is one of the best horror storytelling games that we've seen in recent years. At the end of 2022, we got God of War Ragnarok, which was an incredible game. Easily one of my favourite games of 2022, but as it didn't release in 2023, it technically doesn't make it onto this list. However, within the last week, we've just had the new DLC made available, which kind of puts it back on the list. So on December 12th, we got the Valhalla DLC, which is an epilogue to the full game. But this isn't just a few new levels, this actually brings us new combat elements, new enemies, and other surprises. It kind of makes it feel like a new game, not just a generic DLC. So in Ragnarok, you play as both Kratos and his son Atreus, whereas in Valhalla, you only play as Kratos. But of course, we still get the same great visuals, voice acting, and story. Now, although this DLC is set to take place after the full game, you don't actually need to have completed the game in order to play it, although I would recommend playing the full game first just to avoid any spoilers. And if you have played the previous Ragnarok game and you still own it, you'll be pleased to hear that this DLC is absolutely free. And that's because Santa Monica are giving it away for surpassing 15 million sales. So if you haven't already, make sure you download this today as it's going to be a must play this year. And within the last few weeks we had Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which I'm about 10 hours into so far and already really enjoying it. This open world first person game is definitely one for the Avatar fans, which lets you explore Pandora, running, jumping and climbing on pretty much everything in sight. And what's more is you can take to the sky on your Banshee, which opens up the game to a whole new level. Playing the game certainly feels more like a movie than a game due to the cutscenes and the storytelling throughout. But that's not a bad thing. Also, the visuals and the scenery are stunning. And something I've found as you're running around is how smooth the parkour is. It's not heavy or clunky, which you would normally get from a game like this. Now, not only can you play this in single player, there is also a co-op option so you can team up with your mates online. And after playing it for the last few days, I would say this game is a cross between Far Cry and Horizon Forbidden West, but without the clunkiness of Far Cry, and it is definitely more than just a skin, which I know a lot of people compared it to online. And if you're a fan of Harry Potter or you just like open world RPGs, we have Hogwarts Legacy. This launched back in February, which seems like a really long time ago now, but it's a brilliant game that I think does a great job of capturing Harry Potter and that wizardry magic. Set in the 1800s, you start by making your own character and choosing your house, which all have a slightly different storyline and characters along the way. You then take on the role of a new student as you explore the Hogwarts grounds, the forests and the coastline, either on foot or on your trusty broom. I like that there's a good mixture of the main storyline, side quests and collectibles to keep the game fresh and varied. There are also about 20 Easter eggs throughout the map for those Potter fans. Some are obvious and some not so obvious, but are all references to the books, movies or characters that we've seen before. And as you explore the map, it's hard not to be impressed by the visuals and the scenery. But it's the atmosphere of this game that really takes it to the next level and makes it feel pretty magical, especially if you walk around the Hogwarts grounds and interact with the characters. For me, this game lived up to my expectations and was an easy platinum for me, even with the unnecessary trophies. Like, do you really need to play all 4 houses for about 2 hours each just to get a trophy? But either way, this game is a must play for you Harry Potter fans out there. So it might surprise you to see Cyberpunk 2077 on the list, but since the recent Phantom Liberty DLC, this game has been completely transformed. I mean, I enjoyed the full game when it first launched back in 2020. I actually completed it within a week, but that's not to say it wasn't littered with bugs and crashes. Well, since then we've seen enough patches, updates and now this DLC, they've made the original one look like a beta and this is now the full release. So the Phantom Liberty expansion isn't just a few new missions, it's a new spy thriller spin-off which introduces a whole new district and storyline. This expansion is set in a place called Dogtown, which includes new characters, quests and gigs, along with new weapons and vehicles. So it's more than just a DLC, it's an update that really transforms the entire game. Now, although you don't need to have played the original base game, as you can jump straight in with the expansion, I would recommend you play the entire game first, as this is set at the end of the main story, so it might not make total sense to you. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I feel that any game that launched during the first half of the year is borderline forgotten about by the end of the year, like Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This launched back in April and was one of the biggest and best games that I played back then. In fact, I think it was one of the best action-adventure games to release in 2023. So it's a sequel to the 2019 game Fallen Order, and it takes place 5 years after that, where you once again play as Cal with the mission of protecting the galaxy. Along the way you meet plenty of allies and enemies, pick up accessories, weapons and clothes that you can customize and use. For example, you can now customize the look of Cal with different clothes, facial hair and hairstyles. Now if you've played the previous games, this one will feel very familiar with the exploration and combat, but they've actually improved certain elements that make this even more enjoyable to play. Cal now has 5 lightsabers to pick between and different stances that make battles and combat feel more varied. Not only that, but the main story and plot keep you coming back for more. There's plenty of puzzles, bounty hunting and collectibles that I found have kept me exploring for longer than I would normally do. In June we got the 16th installment of Final Fantasy, which is an action role-playing game and easily one of the best games in the entire series. You play as Clive, the protagonist, on a journey of revenge, hope and sorrow. It's taken the core feel of the previous games but made this a modern classic. The game is full of memorable characters, plenty of combat scenes and stunning visuals. It's also fluid and smooth that makes this a fantastic RPG. Now, although this game is technically a sequel to the 15th in the series, it's actually a completely separate story. And I think if you're a fan of the Final Fantasy games, you'll naturally want to play this anyway. In fact, you probably already have. But even if you're new to the series, this is a great game to jump in with. Back in 2005, we had Resident Evil 4 on the PlayStation 2. It was a great game. Well, nearly 20 years later, we got a remake called, you guessed it, Resident Evil 4. It's a third-person survival horror game set in rural Spain. This takes the same story and characters from the original, including playing as Leon S. Kennedy, but completely redesigned from the ground up. And even after 20 years, the story, characters and gameplay have held up really well. And it has a perfect balance of jump scares, exploration and action that even if you played the original game, this will still keep you guessing what happens next. Now this is an incredibly dark game, especially when you're walking around with your torch out trying to navigate through the buildings. But believe it or not, it's not unplayable. The graphics and lighting make it feel real and really eerie, enough that it feels like a classic horror even in 2023. And then of course within the last few weeks we saw the VR upgrade, which has now made it available on PSVR 2. I've not actually tried this yet, but I can imagine it making it even scarier and better than before. So if you like your horror survival games, Resident Evil 4 Remake will be a brilliant game to play. Now if you enjoy your Souls-like games, you'll want to check out Lies of P. This is one of those games that I originally looked over as honestly I'm not a huge Souls fan. Sure, I've played Demon's Souls and a couple of others, and although they are brilliant games, I would not put those in my personal top 10. However, Lies of P adds something extra that makes this Souls-like game really stand out. It's loosely based on the story of Pinocchio, where you are a robotic puppet created by Geppetto. It's set in the late 19th century and you need to navigate your way through the plagued city of Krat, fighting various enemies as you go. As you would expect, this is a challenging game, but it has the perfect blend of smooth combat, great characters and a compelling story that makes this a true masterpiece. I didn't think I would enjoy this as much as I did, so yeah, Lies of P easily makes it onto the top list of games from 2023. Plus, I think the visuals on this look incredible. And if you like your classic fighting games, Mortal Kombat 1 should scratch that itch. This takes everything we knew about fighting games and turned it into what I can only describe as the best fighting game that we've seen in the series. I'll be honest, before this game launched, I was a little bit nervous about what they would do with trying to modernise the game, that it would become almost unrecognisable. Whereas actually what they've done is combined the core fight scenes and the character selection with new visuals and storytelling that take this to a whole new level. And instead of just mindlessly going from fight to fight and working your way through the characters and the main campaign, we have cutscenes which show the characters and story like we've never seen before. And on top of that, we have the new invasion mode, which opens up the game even further. Oh, and as for the gore, brutality and finishing moves, it is ridiculously fun to witness. So yeah, if you do like your fighting games, Mortal Kombat 1 really is a must-play game. Now, we couldn't have the best games from 2023 without mentioning Game of the Year winner Baldur's Gate 3. This is a huge fantasy RPG which is the third installment in the series, and this game really is nothing short of a masterpiece when it comes to role-playing games. It has got everything you want and expect from an RPG. It's immersive, great combat, incredible story and voice acting, and the graphics are brilliant. In fact, Baldur's Gate 3 has kind of redefined what an open-world game is. Now, the way this game is designed is that every decision you make will shape the direction and outcome of the story. And not only can you play this game single player, but you can also join forces and play it in co-op multiplayer as well. So if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons or the previous Baldur's Gate games, this is a must play. Then on top of all of those awesome games, these are a few others that did not make it onto the top 12 from 2023. So we've got Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores, which was a DLC which launched back in April. This followed on directly from the main story, and you did need to have finished that in order to unlock this area within the story. Then we had Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now, I really enjoyed the scenery, the parkour and the visuals, but I felt the story lacked that spark to make this a really good game, although it didn't stop me from spending about 50 hours going for the platinum. The Crew Motorfest was a great arcade racing game that I put a lot of time into when it first launched, and it definitely scratched that Forza Horizon itch that I needed on the PlayStation 5. The only issue that I had was the slow progression with races, and that was due to them being locked behind in-game paywalls. And of course, Modern Warfare 3 needed a mention as well. Call of Duty will always be a guilty pleasure for me every single year. We know it's never going to be in the top 10 of any list, but it's a game that we can pick up and play and jump online with our friends. So although it's not in my best games from 2023, it's one that I probably put the most hours into every year. So 2023 was an awesome year for new games, and it's incredible to think that all of these games that we've talked about today only launched within the last 12 months. Now, it's almost impossible to buy and play every single game, but which was your favourite from 2023? Did I cover it today? My personal favourite was Spider-Man 2. I think it has the perfect balance of open world exploring, nice visuals, story length and that fluid combat that make it a really enjoyable game. But honestly, you cannot pick a bad game. And if you've not played them all, you've got a huge library of games to catch up on. Well, hopefully today's video gave you some inspiration for yourself. Now drop a best PS5 games in the comments and I'll give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my PlayStation Portal or PlayStation Explore videos next, as it covers the latest items to be released from PlayStation. And I can tell you now, those earbuds really surprised me. Well, thanks for watching, please like, sub and follow me everywhere. Until next time.